Before I go any farther, I need to acknowledge that this week has not been easy for some of us, for a lot of us, especially for those of us who have uteruses. There's been a lot of loud voices saying some really terrifying things, terrifying especially for those of us who remember what it was like before abortion was safe and legal. It's those last three words that are most important: safe and legal. If you are distressed or anxious by what is happening around women's reproductive rights, I just want you to know that as your minister, I'm here if you need me. I really am. This isn't in the script, but let me just say there are some of us of a certain age who remember girls we went to school with who went off and never came back or never came back whole. And when people are trying to go into abstractions and idealistic language, I want you to remember the specific women you have known for whom it was not safe and it was not legal. Say their names. Do not get distracted by the abstractions or the infinites. Get concrete. Do not let them become forgotten. And do not let others become forgotten. Let me compose myself with some words by Ralph Waldo Emerson. You can find it in your hymnal, number 556, These Roses. These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There's no time for them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless root, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But we postpone or remember. We do not live in the present, but with reverted eye lament the past, or heedless of the riches that surround us, stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy or strong unless we too live with nature in the present, above time. Or so says Emerson. Roses, all flowers, but roses especially, have captured our imagination and attention for millennia. And what began as just kind of a rangy, white, pink-blossomed bush has been endlessly tinkered with to emphasize one feature or another, a more elegant bud, fewer thorns, a tidy habit, or more vivid colors. And what was once a bush that just bloomed briefly in early spring all at once has now been cajoled and bred into countless varieties that will bloom from spring until fall. For anyone who's spent any time messing around with roses, you probably have a scar or two to show for it. Those heritage roses and the antique roses rustled out of old farmyards and rescued from ditches. They may have pink, delicate blooms, but they're tough survivors. In comparison, the hybrid tea rose, roses that have been bred for exquisite single stem flowers, the bushes themselves can be kind of sickly specimens, susceptible to every fungus and rot and aphid and wilting that happens along. The old roses with their single moment of a lavish bloom, their delicate blousy flowers, their staggering perfume. They're harder to find, and you might have to give blood to appreciate them up close. Those are the roses that inspired poetry and scripture, and their perfume is what draws us in like silly old bees. We're imitating it so often and capturing it rarely. Right now, all around town are the knockout roses. You know those? They're in front of the post office and the bank and the schools and my house. We've got 2 of them out there. I used to scorn the knockout roses. They've only been around for about 20 years. They're a marvel of botanical ingenuity. Science has been put to, they're disease resistant and they're vigorous and they bloom like mad all summer. They can be pruned with a chainsaw. You can almost forgive them for having almost no scent. They're a rose bush. I now understand. They're a rose bush. You can appreciate them up close, but you can appreciate them from a long distance off in a car whizzing past. Wow, look at that rose bush. There they are. They're cheerfully waving at everybody. Not a wisp of nuance to their welcome. Their blooms are these bright, clear, deep, no delicate shading, no variation across the age. They're pink. They're red. They're yellow. They're pink. I've spent time with the knockout roses now, and I really can't fault us for planting them in such numbers. They're so American. How can I despise their vigor and good nature? I mean, they're just so democratic in their unfussy accessibility. I mean, they just jam them in whatever soil you have, and they grow. I love all the roses. I swoon over the old ones, and I stand in awe of their thorns and perfume. I admire the crisp intensity of a hybrid tea rose, like the Chrysler Imperial or the Mr. Lincoln, with the I sigh at the sight of a nearly thornless Lady Banksia rose climbing up on a fence with its shiny dark green leaves setting off those lovely light yellow and white blossoms. I love them all, these roses. I love them so well, I don't need to anthropomorphize them, to try and assign them human attributes. Because I know roses have plenty of keen interests all their own. Here's what they're interested in: growing well, attracting pollinators, reproducing, and doing it again. All plants. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless root, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. I don't need to anthropomorphize the roses. Let's see what happens if I rosemorphize the humans. You're not a rose in the strictest sense. But sometimes we might act a bit like them. I've seen people sulking because their soil is not quite right. I know folks who will busily put up a whole thicket of thorns to distract from their actual beauty. I have seen people put all of their energy into one perfect flowering moment of creativity, and in doing so, ruin their lives. I've seen people exquisitely elegant, tall stems, vivid hues, arched flowers, who succumb to tragic drama at the first stress that besets them. And I've met, you've met, we've all met folks who are just growing along, neither showy nor self-effacing, who grow deep and wise, blooming in their seasons and holding down their corner of the yard. But we postpone or remember. We do not live in the present, but with reverted eye lament the past, or heedless of the riches that surround us, stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy or strong unless we too live with nature in the present, above time. Oh, Ralph Waldo. He went by Waldo to his friends. He scolds us for not aligning ourselves with nature. I'm a little bit more forgiving. For I also know that he had a little more romantic view of nature. And I suspect he even wrote about gardens, but I wonder, did he ever actually tend one across the season and the years? I mean, because actual gardeners tend to be a little bit more humble, a little bit less certain. Gardeners tend to be more interested in what actually works in this place rather than some idealized version of what might be better. But just as I'm willing to let roses be roses, I'm willing to let Waldo be Waldo and consider what it might mean to live with nature in the present, above time. So if you could be a rose, how would you live your every moment of your existence? Would you, while still dormant in the winter, would you scold yourself for your lack of productivity and measurable accomplishments? Would you, as your flowers succumb to a sudden frost, would you regret having ever put out the effort to make the flowers? Would you, as you're slowly growing new flowers, would you worry that they might not be perfect? Would you worry that they might not live up to others' expectations? Would you be dissatisfied with your leaves? Or resent the ladybugs who haven't attended to the aphids on your buds? Or might you wriggle your roots down into the soil where you stand and push up canes thick with thorns and blossoms in the joyous insistence of now? Might you begin calling to the bees, calling to birds, and invite them to join you in your dancing? I wonder, because like you, I have never seen a rose looking sorry for itself. Maybe instead of becoming a rose, perhaps we can plant a rose in our heart, in our soul. If you're still aching from an earlier religious wounding, messages that only celebrated the gory thorns, or a religion which mistrusted beauty, perhaps it would help to plant a climbing Universalist rose in your heart. the kind like a mermaid or a zephyr and ruhan, the kind that grow thick and fast and cover. Perhaps planting a rose in your heart will change. What would happen if you grow into the messages that all are beloved? What you might remake the landscape of your own soul. You might cover up that rusted old pickup of Calvinism and cloak it in a deep green grace. You might find a myriad of branches growing within you, each one starred with simple 5-petaled flowers that smell of belonging. If you were to be a rose in nature above time, might you finally trust your roots and the soil? If you were to be a rose graceful in your branches, could you be satisfied in your nature for all of your moments? As you go out into this world, notice the roses. They're full bloom right now, in their moment. They're ready for you to notice them. They're waving at you. Go out and be with these roses. Blessed be. Amen.